Over the last month, the Ukrainian armed forces have succeeded in slowing the Russian army's advance in central Donbass. However, this achievement has come at a steep cost. In August, Ukraine redeployed significant forces from other fronts to reinforce defenses around Russia's breakthrough between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka, leaving other sectors more vulnerable. For example, Russian troops have advanced toward Sloviansk along both banks of the Seversky Donets River, capturing the Kremina forests, an area that the AFU had held since the fall of 2022. Meanwhile, another Russian force is advancing almost unopposed westward along the Dnipropetrovsk-Zaporizhia regional border. This is in addition to smaller-scale crises in Ukrainian defenses near Kyiv, south of Zaporizhia, and around Kupiansk in the eastern Kharkiv region. Meduza reports that the situation along the front line between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka has become somewhat clearer in recent weeks. In August and early September, only a handful of videos from this area were published, mostly showing Ukrainian counterattacks against Russian units that had penetrated deep behind AFU lines. However, geolocated footage now allows for a more complete chronology of the operation and offers a better sense of the current front line, though this remains difficult since in reality there is no continuous line as such. In early August, Russian units from the 51st Army advanced approximately 20 kilometers or 12 miles into Ukrainian defenses between the villages of Nikhanorivka and Volodymyrivka, reaching the Dobropilya-Kramatorsk road. Russian forces were also spotted on the northeastern outskirts of Dobropilya. By mid-August, the AFU had brought in reserves to the Dobropilya area from several other areas, primarily from the Sumy region, but also from positions near Kupiansk, Chasiv and eastern Dnipropetrovsk. These reinforcements enabled Ukrainian forces to push Russian troops back from the Dobropilya-Kramatorsk road. However, attempts to cut off the Russian salient entirely through strikes on Nikhanorivka and Novotoritsky on the western flank and Pankivka on the eastern were unsuccessful. Russia also brought reinforcements to the area. Initially, the 51st Army, which had previously concentrated most of its forces east of Pokrovsk, around Rudinsky, sent additional units to strengthen the neck of the breakthrough. Then, elements of the 20th Motor Rifle Division, which had been advancing toward Konstantinivka from the southwest, were redeployed further east to Novotoritsky, where Ukrainian forces had broken through. Finally, in September, at least 4 Marine brigades were deployed to the breakthrough area near Dobropilya, brought in from the Sumy region and other reserve formations. By early October, Russian forces had likely stabilized the base of the breakthrough. Ukrainian sources published videos showing Russian troops in Dorozhny, west of Nikhanorivka, and in Novy Shakove, further to the north. However, Ukrainian sources insist that the AFU later counterattacked again and retook both Dorozhny and Novy Shakove, though there is no visual confirmation of this, just as there is none to confirm that Zaporizhny has been recaptured. On the eastern flank, Russian Marine brigades advanced toward Shakove and Sofivka. If these villages are captured, the 51st Army's positions will no longer be exposed on that side. At the tip of the salient, based on published footage, Russian forces continue to hold positions near Kucherev Yar, Zoloty Polodiaz, and Vilny. Even if Russian forces succeed in fully stabilizing the situation, a renewed advance toward Dobropilya or Kramatorsk seems unlikely. Logistical constraints remain a major obstacle, according to Meduza. The Russian armed forces do not control key roads or major settlements in the area, making it difficult to safely concentrate forces in the immediate rear or shield them from drone strikes. Capturing Shakove and Sofivka could improve the situation for Russia's units to some extent. However, without taking control of Pokrovsk or Konstantinivka, any advance toward Kramatorsk looks improbable. In fact, for much of the past week, the entire southern part of Pokrovsk city remained in a gray zone. Russian troops have reached as far as the city center via destroyed neighborhoods, but have been unable to establish a foothold. However, Russian media South Front Press reported on a recent breakthrough in Pokrovsk as of today. According to information from the Russian Armed Forces Command, on the 6th of October, Russian assault groups made significant progress in the southeastern part of Pokrovsk, dislodging Ukrainian units from a multi-story residential area in the Shakhtyrsky district. A notable accomplishment for the Russian forces was the advance towards the railway tracks in the western part of the city, as well as the expansion of their offensive in the vicinity of the coal warehouses. Reports also indicate that key supply routes for the Ukrainian grouping have been cut, specifically the road to Novopavlivka, which is located south of Rodinsky. According to Russian command estimates, the agglomeration is approximately 5 kilometers from complete encirclement. The Ukrainian side confirms the intensity of the fighting in Pokrovsk, but characterizes the situation as being under control. Reports mention the organization of defenses along the line of ponds in the Pushkin Street area, where Ukrainian units are attempting to prevent Russian troops from advancing further into the urban area. Meanwhile, Russian forces advancing from Toretsk and Chasiv Yar have reached the southwestern outskirts of Konstantinivka. Additionally, the Russian Defense Ministry claims that, north of Chasiv Yar, Russian troops have deeply penetrated Ukrainian defenses and nearly encircled Konstantinivka from the north. There is no visual confirmation of this. After years of fighting, Russian troops have captured the Kremina forests, an extensive woodland area in the northern bank of the Siversky Donets River. This was made possible by two breakthroughs, one along the southern bank of the river from Bilohorivka through Serebrenka and further toward Chornivka. The other along a northern tributary, the Chorny Zarabets River, advancing from Torsky toward Yampil. Ukrainian forces in the forested area likely withdrew across the river via Chornivka to the opposite bank. By late September, Russian troops had pushed the AFU out of the settlement of Zarichny, adjacent to Torsky, and then broke through to Yampil, capturing part of the village. On the opposite bank of the Siversky Donets, Russian forces advanced to Chornivka and reached the northern outskirts of Siversk. Simultaneously, they launched a major offensive on Siversk from the east and south, capturing the village of Vyamika, Fedorivka, and part of Perizny. The offensive along the Siversky Donets poses a serious threat to AFU's hold on Siversk, which lies in a lowland area, while Russian forces control the high ground to the east and north, as well as to the town of Liman, a key road hub on the river's northern bank. Liman is already nearly encircled. Russian forces have seized the village of Shandrilovy, northwest of the town, and reached the road linking Liman and Izium. The route to Siversk is already cut near Yampil. The only remaining supply line to Liman runs via river crossings near Rahirodok, the outskirts of Sloviansk. However, the fixed road and rail bridges there have been destroyed, and the ferry crossing is under frequent Russian airstrikes. Resupplying a large force group north of the river will be difficult. Still, the river behind the Ukrainian grouping is not only a vulnerability, it also offers defensive advantages. Russian forces can be held on the northern bank for a prolonged period, meaning there is no immediate threat to Sloviansk, even if Liman falls. However, if Russian troops succeed in capturing Siversk, they would be positioned to resume the offensive along the southern bank. The Russian assault on Liman has fractured Ukraine's forces in the area, particularly the 3rd Army Corps. Units of the 3rd Assault Brigade, along with other corps elements, have been cut off from the main force defending Liman. Despite this, the 3rd Assault Brigade is attempting to support the town's defense by attacking the northern flank of the Russian grouping. Ukrainian forces managed to retake the village of Rikodov, but have so far been unable to advance further into the rear of the Russian forces assaulting Shandrilovy, located roughly 10 kilometers or 6 miles to the south. Russian forces have received reinforcements not only in the breakthrough sector near Novopavlivka, but also further south of Pokrovsk, at the junction of the Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia regions. In this area, Russian troops are advancing south of the Vovcha River toward the road connecting Huliapole, a fortified town and key transport hub in the Zaporizhia region, with the settlement of Pokrovsk, a major logistical center of the AFU. The Russian command has redeployed elements of the 90th Tank Division, part of the center grouping, to the southern bank of the Vovcha after previously operating on the northern bank. The units freed up from the east grouping have reinforced Russian troops pushing toward Huliapole. AFU defenses in this sector, having lost several units redeployed to the Novopavlivka area, are now operating in a more mobile manner. Ukrainian forces are no longer able to maintain a solid, continuous front line and are instead attempting to slow the Russian advance through localized counterattacks. Although the AFU has managed to briefly retake some settlements, Russian forces have advanced 12 to 17 kilometers, or 7.5 to 10.5 miles, across various parts of the sector over the past month. From the Russian-held center of the village of Rubove, the distance to the Huliapole road is only about 10 kilometers, or 6 miles. Ukrainian sources claim that Rubove was retaken by the AFU in a counterattack, but there is no visual confirmation of this. Additionally, troops from the 90th Tank Division have crossed the Volcha near Ivanivka and now threaten to launch an offensive northward toward Novopavlivka, posing a serious risk to AFU units defending the area west of Pokrovsk. In summary, on the 6th of October, the operational situation demonstrates the continued high intensity of combat operations on the main axis, with the most significant changes occurring in the Donetsk region. Russian armed forces are maintaining an initiative on most fronts, particularly on the Pokrovsk axis, where they have achieved the most notable tactical successes. Facing a shortage of reserves, the Ukrainian armed forces continue to employ a flexible defense strategy, making the most of their advantages in unmanned aerial vehicle and electronic warfare system usage. This tactic is applied particularly effectively on the Zaporizhzhia axis. The Russian advance is being held back by the large-scale use of drones and modern electronic warfare systems. Against the backdrop of the complex operational situation, significant structural changes have occurred within Ukraine's senior military leadership. The disbandment of the Dnepr Operational Strategic Group at the end of September was officially explained as a transition to a core-based command system, but may have had personal-related motives. The Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Alexander Syrsky, may have used this reorganization to weaken the position of his potential successor, General Mikhail Drapati, who commanded the group. While retaining his staff, Drapati will be transferred to a less significant sector of the front in the northeastern direction, where he could be blamed for any potential territorial losses. Meanwhile, the analytical platform Deep State commented on the reform's formal nature and lack of real improvements to the command and control system. According to their assessment, despite the announcement of the completion of the transition to the core system, the new headquarters continue to command the same disparate units and have not abandoned the practice of creating temporary tactical groups. Analysts conclude that the reform has amounted to little more than a rebranding exercise, failing to increase command effectiveness. Under the current conditions, it has also become a tool for reshuffling personnel within the senior military leadership.
Профиль работы ВПЛАшник тоже.
ПВО сбивать.